The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Rivers Tech's 32nd floor as I watched my wife destroy our marriage with surgical precision. Marriage, I'd learned, was just office politics with worse coffee and higher stakes. Alex, we need to talk. Naomi's voice carried that particular chill reserved for firing employees and ending relationships. She stood behind her mahogany desk like a general preparing for war, her perfectly manicured fingers drumming against the surface. I'd built this company with her, brick by digital brick, sacrificing weekends and sleep to turn her vision into Seattle's hottest tech startup. Now, at 39, I was the chief operating officer of a company worth $50 million. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was about to be executed in the empire I'd helped create. Let me guess, I said, settling into the chair across from her. This is about Theo. Theo Lane, 26 years old, Harvard MBA, social media influencer with 200,000 followers, and the most dangerous person I'd ever encountered. He'd joined our company 3 months ago as a marketing intern, armed with buzzwords, designer clothes, and the kind of manufactured charm that made middle-aged executives forget their common sense. His allegations are serious, Alex. Naomi's green eyes, once warm enough to melt my skepticism about love, now looked at me like I was a stranger. Workplace mistreatment, creating a hostile work environment, sabotaging his projects. Allegations. I let the word hang in the air like smoke. From a kid who's been here 12 weeks and somehow knows more about our company culture than the guy who wrote the employee handbook. Jenna corroborates his story. Of course she did. Jenna Walsh, head of human resources and Naomi's best friend since college, had never liked me. I was too blue-collar for their crowd, too direct for their passive-aggressive games. My father had been a mechanic. Theirs had been investment bankers. The class divide in our marriage had always been there, lurking beneath the surface like a fault line, waiting for the right pressure. What exactly am I supposed to have done? Naomi opened a manila folder with the ceremony of a judge reading a death sentence. Inappropriate comments about his appearance, deliberately excluding him from meetings, yesterday, cornering him in the supply room, and making unwanted advances. I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. The supply room? Naomi, I haven't been in the supply room since 20. We have people for that. He has witnesses. Who? Lila Martinez saw you following him. The cleaning staff heard raised voices. Lila Martinez, Theo's influencer friend who'd been hanging around the office lately, always with her phone out, always recording content for her lifestyle brand. Convenient how she'd witnessed this alleged incident that never happened. You're really going to destroy our marriage over this kid's lies? Naomi's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something that looked almost like guilt. This isn't about our marriage. This is about the company, about protecting our employees. Our employees. I stood up, walking to the window where Seattle sprawled below us in the gray afternoon light. Funny how quickly our became my in your head. The truth was sitting right there between us, unspoken but obvious. Naomi was sleeping with Theo. Maybe not physically yet, but emotionally, intellectually, she'd already left our marriage for the promise of something younger and more exciting. Theo had played this perfectly, feeding her ego while positioning me as the obstacle to their happiness. The board is meeting in an hour, she said quietly. I wanted to tell you first. How generous. Alex, please don't make this harder than it has to be. I turned back to face her. This woman I'd loved for 8 years, married for 6. What exactly are you asking me to do? Resign, quietly. We'll provide references, a severance package. You can say it was a mutual decision to pursue other opportunities. And if I refuse? Her expression hardened. Then we'll have to discuss your behavior publicly, with lawyers, with the press. The threat hung in the air like a blade. In the #MeToo era, accusations alone could destroy a career. Theo knew this. Naomi knew this. They were counting on me, being too smart to fight back. I need time to think. You have until 5 o'clock. I walked toward the door, then paused. One question. Do you actually believe I did these things? For a long moment, she didn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I believe we've grown apart. I believe this company needs fresh energy. I believe sometimes good people make mistakes. It wasn't an answer, but it told me everything I needed to know. The boardroom felt like a courtroom as I sat at the polished conference table, surrounded by faces I'd known for years. These people had been to my wedding, my birthday parties, my housewarming when Naomi and I bought our Capitol Hill home. Now they looked at me like I was radioactive. Theo sat 2 seats down from Naomi, his expression a masterpiece of wounded innocence. He'd dressed carefully for this performance. Conservative navy suit, minimal styling, in his usually perfect hair, just enough vulnerability in his posture to suggest someone bravely facing his tormentor. Before we begin, I said, I want everyone to know that I categorically deny these allegations. Jenna cleared her throat. Alex, we appreciate your position, but the evidence is quite compelling. What evidence? Hearsay from people who barely know me? There are emails, Theo said quietly, his voice trembling just enough to seem authentic. Messages you sent that made me uncomfortable. I saved them because I thought maybe I was overreacting. He slid a printed email across the table. I recognized my company address, my signature, but the content made my blood freeze. Theo, I hope you're settling in well. You have exactly the kind of energy this place needs. Maybe we could discuss your future here over drinks sometime. Just the two of us. I never sent this. The IT logs show it came from your computer, Jenna said. Then someone accessed my account. Your password is Naomi1985, Theo said. Not exactly Fort Knox. The room went silent. He was right about my password, which meant he'd either guessed it or someone had told him. I looked at Naomi, but she was studying her hands. This is a setup. Alex, said Robert Chen, our lead investor, these are serious allegations. The company's reputation is being destroyed by lies. Maybe we should take a break, Naomi suggested. No. I stood up. If we're doing this, let's do it right. Theo, tell everyone exactly what happened in this alleged supply room incident. Theo's eyes darted to Naomi, then back to me. You cornered me. Said things about my appearance, about how I could advance my career if I was friendly. What time? Around 3:30? Yesterday? Yes. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to my calendar, and turned the screen toward the room. Yesterday at 3:30, I was in a client call with Portland General Electric. 45 minutes. Pete Morrison from security can verify I never left my office. For the first time, Theo looked uncertain. Maybe it was 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock, I was in this boardroom with Naomi in the quarterly budget review. Jenna, you have the meeting notes. The time might be off, Jenna said quickly. Trauma can affect memory. Trauma. I let the words settle. From an incident that never happened. Alex, please sit down, Naomi said. Why? So you can finish this charade? So you can pretend this is about protecting the company instead of protecting your affair? The words hit the room like a bomb. Theo's face flushed red. Naomi's composure cracked completely. That's enough, she snapped. Is it? Because I think we're just getting started. I looked around the table at these people who'd once respected me. You want to know what really happened? 3 months ago, Theo realized I was the only thing standing between him and a fast track to management, so he started planning. Got close to Naomi, fed her ego, made her feel young and relevant again. Then he started his campaign against me. You're being paranoid, Robert said. Am I? Theo, what's your background before Harvard? I don't see how that's relevant. Humor me. Theo glanced at Naomi again. Marketing internships. Social media consulting. For which companies? Several. I'd have to check my resume. I already did. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared that morning, sensing this moment would come. Theo Lane, according to LinkedIn, worked for 3 companies in the past 2 years. I called all 3. None of them have any record of employing him. The room shifted uncomfortably. Theo's jaw tightened. People make mistakes with records, he said. All 3 companies? The same mistake? I opened the folder. Harvard Business School confirmed you attended for 1 semester before dropping out. Your influencer income comes primarily from your trust fund, not sponsorship deals. And your real name is Theodore Lansing, not Lane. This is irrelevant, Jenna interrupted. Is it? Because it establishes a pattern of deception. I looked directly at Theo. Just like the emails you fabricated, the witnesses you coached, and the timeline you can't keep straight. Naomi stood up abruptly. That's enough, Alex. You're clearly not thinking rationally. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. Then you'll understand why the board has voted to terminate your employment, effective immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it made real felt like falling off a cliff. Security will escort you out, she continued. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal items. I looked around the table one more time. These people had made their choice. They'd chosen the lie over the truth, the outsider over the founder, the young and exciting over the loyal and proven. Finally, I closed my folder and headed for the door. But Naomi, when you figure out who Theo really is, remember that you chose him over 8 years of marriage and 6 years of partnership. Alex, I'm done. Pete Morrison was waiting outside the boardroom, his expression apologetic but professional. We've been friends for 5 years, but friendship didn't override corporate policy. I'm sorry, man, he said quietly as we walked toward my office. You're just doing your job. My office felt smaller as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. Photos of Naomi and me at company events, awards from industry organizations, the coffee mug that said, World's Okayest COO, that she'd given me last Christmas. Through the glass wall, I could see the rest of the staff pretending to work while stealing glances at the drama unfolding. By tomorrow, the story would be all over Seattle's tight-knit tech community. By next week, it would be impossible for me to find work anywhere in the city. Rivers? Theo appeared in my doorway, his expression now openly triumphant. I wanted to say I'm sorry it came to this. I stopped packing and looked at him. Really looked at him. He was younger than me, better dressed, more conventionally attractive, but his eyes were cold, calculating. He'd destroyed my life as casually as someone might delete an email. No, you're not. I know this is hard, but maybe it's for the best. Naomi deserves someone who supports her vision. And that's you? I think so. I walked over to him, close enough to see the satisfaction he was trying to hide. Theo, let me give you some free advice. Naomi is brilliant, but she's also ruthless. Whatever you think you're getting from her, whatever promises she's made, remember that she just destroyed her husband's career based on lies. What do you think she'll do to you when someone younger and more exciting comes along? His confidence flickered for just a moment. Enjoy the victory, I said. It won't last. 20 minutes later, I was standing on the sidewalk in the rain, holding a cardboard box and watching my life disappear behind the glass walls of Rivers Tech. Naomi and Theo were visible in her office, already deep in conversation, already planning their future. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd hoped never to use. Davidson and Associates, how can I help you? I need to speak with Margaret Davidson. Tell her Alex Rivers wants to discuss a divorce. My new apartment was a studio in Belltown that smelled like old cigarettes and broken dreams. The previous tenant had apparently been a chain smoker with a pet that wasn't house-trained. It was moldy, cramped, and depressing, but at least the rats were honest about their intentions. 3 days after my corporate execution, I was sitting on a folding chair I'd bought at Target, eating takeout Chinese food, and wondering how my life had imploded so completely. The rain outside had matched my mood, relentless, gray, and seemingly permanent. My phone buzzed. Pete Morrison. How are you holding up? He asked. Living the dream. How's the office? Weird. Theo's already moved into your old office, had it redecorated. Fast worker. Alex, I need to tell you something. Off the record. I sat up straighter. What? I've been watching the security footage from the day Theo claimed you cornered him. You were right about your alibi, but there's something else. The cameras show Theo going into the supply room alone, staying for about 10 minutes, then coming out looking disheveled. He staged it. Gets better. I checked his keycard access. He's been staying late almost every night since he started, but always with Naomi. They leave together around 9 or 10. I wasn't surprised, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the gut. How long? Best I can tell, about 6 weeks. 6 weeks. While I was working 16-hour days to close our biggest contract ever, my wife was falling in love with a professional liar. There's more, Pete continued. I did some digging on Theodore Lansing. His trust fund? It's real, but it's tied up in legal issues. His family cut him off after some kind of scandal in Boston. Details are sealed, but word is he was involved in something similar at his last company. Similar how? Inappropriate relationship with a married executive. When it went bad, he accused the husband of harassment. Sound familiar? My blood went cold. Do you have proof? Working on it. But Alex, you need to be careful. If Theo's done this before, he's not going to let you walk away quietly. After Pete hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking. Theo wasn't just an opportunist who'd gotten lucky. He was a predator with a pattern, and I'd been his latest mark. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I opened my laptop and started typing. The divorce papers took 2 days to prepare. Margaret Davidson was exactly the kind of lawyer I needed: expensive, ruthless, and completely uninterested in reconciliation. She'd handled several high-profile tech divorces and had a reputation for leaving opposing counsel in ruins in the courtroom. "Your wife made a critical error," she explained during our consultation. "By firing you without cause and based on fabricated evidence, she's opened herself up to significant liability. Washington is a community property state, which means you're entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage." "Including the company?" "Especially the company. You helped build it, you have equity, and you can prove your contributions." She's about to learn that destroying your career comes with a very expensive price tag. I also prepared my resignation letter. Not the quiet departure Naomi had demanded, but a formal document that laid out exactly why I was leaving and what had been done to me. I made copies for every board member, every major investor, and every department head. On Friday morning, exactly 3 weeks after my termination, my phone rang. "Naomi, Alex, we need to talk." "Do we? I think maybe we moved too fast. Maybe there's room for discussion." I almost laughed. "Discussion about what?" "About you coming back, about working things out. Have you reflected on what you did, Naomi?" There was a long pause. "I've been thinking about us, about the company. Things have been difficult." "Difficult how?" "Clients are asking questions. The Portland General contract is in jeopardy. Robert is concerned about continuity, of course. This wasn't about our marriage or even about justice. This was about money. Without me, Rivers Tech was struggling, and the board was asking uncomfortable questions about why their COO had been fired so abruptly." "Where do you want to meet?" "My office, this afternoon, 2 o'clock. "I'll be there." I spent the rest of the morning getting ready. Shower, shave, my best suit. The charcoal gray Armani that Naomi had bought me for our 5th anniversary. I wanted to look like the successful executive I'd been, not the broken man I'd become. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into Rivers Tech for the first time since my termination. The security guard recognized me but didn't stop me. Apparently, I was expected. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt like ascending to my own execution, except this time, I was the one holding the tool. Naomi was waiting in her office, but she wasn't alone. Theo sat in the chair I'd occupied 3 weeks earlier, his expression confident and proprietary. He'd claimed his territory and wasn't planning to give it up. "Alex, thank you for coming." Naomi looked tired, older somehow. The stress was showing in the lines around her eyes and the tension in her shoulders. "Naomi, Theo." I nodded to each of them and took the remaining chair. "I want to start by saying that what happened was unfortunate," she began. "Unfortunate. Interesting word choice. Maybe we could have handled things differently, been more thorough in our investigation." "You mean actually conducted an investigation instead of taking the word of a professional liar?" Theo shifted uncomfortably. "I resent that characterization." "I'm sure you do." I looked directly at him. "How's Boston, by the way? I heard you left quite an impression there." His face went pale. Naomi looked confused. "What's he talking about?" she asked. "Nothing," Theo said quickly. "He's trying to deflect." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a photo I'd taken of Pete's research. "Theo, would you like to tell Naomi about Jennifer Walsh, the married VP at Meridian Consulting who you had an affair with, and how when her husband found out, you accused him of workplace harassment?" The room went silent. Naomi turned to stare at Theo, who was now visibly sweating. That's not what happened," he stammered. "No, because I have the court records, the restraining order, the settlement agreement that paid you $50,000 to disappear quietly." "Theo?" Naomi's voice was sharp. "Is this true? It's complicated. The situation was different. Was it? Because it sounds exactly like what you did here. Find a married couple in positions of power, seduce the wife, eliminate the husband, profit from the chaos." Naomi stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "This isn't why we're here. Alex, I'm prepared to offer you your old position back. Full salary, full benefits. We can put this behind us. What about the harassment allegations? We'll issue a statement saying the investigation was inconclusive. And Theo?" She glanced at him, then back at me. "Theo will remain in his current role." I almost felt sorry for her. She was so deep in Theo's web that she couldn't see the obvious trap she'd walked into. Or maybe she could see it, but was too proud to admit she'd been played. That's a generous offer, I said. Then you'll consider it? I reached into my briefcase and pulled out 2 manila envelopes. Actually, I have a counter-proposal. I placed the first envelope on her desk. Divorce papers. I'm citing irreconcilable differences, breach of marital trust, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Her face went white. Alex, you can't be serious. I placed the second envelope next to the first. Formal resignation from Rivers Tech, effective immediately. I'm also filing a wrongful termination lawsuit and demanding an independent investigation into the fabricated evidence used to justify my firing. You're making a mistake, Theo said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Am I? Because from where I sit, I'm finally making the right choice. I stood up. Naomi, you chose to believe a stranger over your husband. You chose to destroy our marriage for a man you've known for 3 months. You chose to humiliate me publicly based on lies. I was trying to protect the company. You were trying to justify sleeping with him. I gestured toward Theo. At least be honest about that. She broke then, the composure she'd maintained for weeks finally cracking. Alex, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, take time, figure things out. 3 weeks ago, you gave me until 5 o'clock to resign quietly or face public destruction. You didn't want to work things out then. I was confused. I was scared. I made mistakes. Yes, you did. And now you get to live with the consequences. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Naomi, you might want to ask Theo about his real financial situation. That trust fund he brags about, it's been frozen pending a fraud investigation. He's broke, desperate, and you're his meal ticket. The last thing I heard as I left was Naomi's voice, sharp and dangerous. Theo, is that true? I didn't wait for his answer. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal meetings, document reviews, and strategic planning. Margaret Davidson was earning every penny of her substantial fee, systematically dismantling Naomi's position while building an ironclad case for my wrongful termination. She's in trouble, Margaret explained during one of our sessions. The fabricated emails alone are grounds for significant damages. Add in the personal relationship with Theo that she failed to disclose, and we're looking at a very favorable settlement. What about the company? You're entitled to half of its current value, plus damages for lost income and reputation harm. I estimate we're looking at somewhere between $15 and $20 million. $20 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having, extracted from the company I'd helped build and the woman I'd once loved. It should have felt like victory, but mostly it felt like ashes. My phone buzzed. Pete Morrison again. You need to see this, he said. Can you meet me at the Starbucks on Pine Street? 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Pete in a crowded coffee shop, watching him scroll through his tablet. Theo's falling apart, he said. After your little revelation about Boston, Naomi started asking questions, lots of questions. And she discovered that pretty much everything he told her was a lie. The Harvard MBA, the successful consulting business, the influencer income, all fabricated. How do you know this? Pete grinned. Because she called me into her office yesterday and asked me to investigate him officially. She's having her own employee investigated? Gets better. I found financial records showing Theo's been living off credit cards for months. He's got gambling debts, unpaid loans, and his family cut him off completely after the Boston incident. So he's desperate, beyond desperate. And Naomi's starting to realize she destroyed her marriage for a con artist. Pete showed me his tablet screen. It was a security camera feed from the office, time-stamped 2 days earlier. Naomi and Theo were in her office, and even without audio, their body language told the story. She was angry, gesturing aggressively. He was defensive, pleading. She fired him yesterday, Pete said. Escorted him out by security, just like you. I felt a grim satisfaction. How's she handling it? Not well. She's been calling you, right? She had been. Multiple times a day, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. I hadn't answered any of them. Alex, there's something else. Something you need to know. Pete's expression turned serious, and I braced myself. Theo's not done. He's been calling reporters, trying to sell his story about harassment at Rivers Tech. He's also been reaching out to your former clients, spreading rumors about financial irregularities. Can he prove any of it? No, but he doesn't need to. In today's climate, accusations alone can destroy reputations. I leaned back in my chair, thinking. Theo was cornered, desperate, and dangerous. He'd already proven he was willing to fabricate evidence and destroy lives to get what he wanted. Now that his con had been exposed, he had nothing left to lose. There's more, Pete continued. I think he's been stealing from the company. What? Small amounts, but consistent. He had access to the marketing budget, and there are discrepancies. Invoices for services that were never provided, payments to vendors that don't exist. How much? Maybe $50,000 over 3 months. Not enough to bankrupt the company, but enough to keep him afloat while he worked his con. I pulled out my phone and called Margaret Davidson. I need to see you, I said. We have new information. That afternoon, I sat in Margaret's office while she reviewed Pete's evidence. Her expression grew more satisfied with each page. This changes everything, she said finally. If we can prove Theo was embezzling, it establishes a pattern of criminal behavior. It also gives us leverage over your wife. She hired him, gave him access, failed to conduct proper background checks. What's our next move? We go public. Press conference, full disclosure, complete transparency. We tell your story before Theo can tell his version. That's risky. Everything's risky now. But you have truth on your side, and that's more powerful than people think. The press conference was scheduled for Friday morning at Margaret's office. We invited every major Seattle media outlet, plus several tech industry publications. The story was too good for them to ignore. Successful executive destroyed by lies, fights back with evidence. Thursday night, I got a call from an unknown number. Alex Rivers? Yes. This is Jennifer Walsh. I think we need to talk. Jennifer Walsh, the married VP from Boston that Theo had targeted before me. I'd found her name in the court records, but hadn't contacted her directly. I saw your lawyer's press release about tomorrow, she continued, about Theo Lansing. What about it? He destroyed my marriage, too. My husband and I are divorced now, my career never recovered, and Theo walked away with a settlement check. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Get even. I have information that can help you. We met that night at a quiet restaurant in Capitol Hill. Jennifer was about 40, professional, with the kind of tired eyes that come from fighting battles you never wanted to fight. Theo's real name is Theodore Lansing Whitmore, she said. His family owns a chain of luxury hotels in New England. They cut him off after he was arrested for credit card fraud in college. Arrested? Charges were dropped after the family paid restitution, but the pattern was established. Theo targets successful, married women in positions of power. He seduces them, eliminates their husbands, then drains them financially until he moves on to the next mark. How many others? That I know of. At least 3 before me, probably more since. He's good at it, Alex. He studies his targets, learns their weaknesses, exploits their insecurities. Why didn't you go public? Jennifer laughed bitterly. With what? A story about how I cheated on my husband with a con artist? How I destroyed my marriage based on lies? The shame was overwhelming. But you're talking now. Because I'm tired of hiding. And because what he did to you is exactly what he did to my husband. Fabricated harassment allegations, coached witnesses, manufactured evidence. She slid a flash drive across the table. Everything I have on Theo, court records, financial documents, contact information for his other victims, use it. I pocketed the drive. Why are you helping me? Because someone needs to stop him, and because you're the first person who's fought back instead of just disappearing quietly. Friday morning arrived gray and rainy, typical Seattle weather for what felt like the most important day of my life. Margaret had arranged the press conference in her office's conference room, with cameras set up and reporters filling every chair. I sat at a table with Margaret on one side and Pete Morrison on the other. The evidence was laid out in neat stacks: financial records, security footage, court documents from Boston, testimony from Jennifer Walsh, and 2 other victims who had agreed to go public. Ladies and gentlemen, Margaret began, 3 weeks ago, my client Alex Rivers was terminated from Rivers Tech, the company he helped found, based on fabricated workplace harassment allegations. Today, we're going to show you exactly how those allegations were manufactured, by whom, and why. For the next hour, we laid out the entire conspiracy. Theo's pattern of targeting married executives, his fabricated background, the stolen money, the coached witnesses, the manufactured evidence. We showed the security footage of him staging the supply room incident, the financial records proving embezzlement, the testimony from his previous victims. The reporters ate it up. This wasn't just a wrongful termination case, it was a story about corporate fraud, marital betrayal, and a con artist who had finally been exposed. "Mr. Rivers," asked a reporter from the Seattle Times, "what's your response to those who might say you're just a bitter ex-husband trying to get revenge?" I leaned into the microphone. 3 weeks ago, I believed my wife when she said she was trying to protect the company. I believed the system would work, that truth would prevail, that good people would see through lies. I was wrong. Sometimes the only way to get justice is to fight for it yourself. What do you want to happen to Mr. Lansing? I want him prosecuted for embezzlement, fraud, and perjury. I want his other victims to know they're not alone. And I want other companies to know what to look for so this doesn't happen again. And your wife? That was the question I'd been dreading. I looked directly into the camera. My wife made choices based on lies, but they were still her choices. She chose to believe a stranger over her husband. She chose to destroy our marriage for someone she barely knew. She chose to humiliate me publicly without conducting a real investigation. Those choices have consequences. After the press conference, Margaret and I retreated to her office to watch the coverage. Every local news station led with the story. The tech blogs were already posting detailed breakdowns. Twitter was exploding with reactions. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Reporters, former colleagues, headhunters, lawyers, everyone wanted a piece of the story. "You did good," Margaret said. "Theo's finished, and your reputation is restored." "What about Naomi?" "That's up to her. She can fight the divorce and face more public scrutiny, or she can settle quietly and try to rebuild her company." I didn't have to wait long for an answer. At 6 o'clock that evening, my phone rang. "Naomi, Alex, please, we need to talk." "I think we've said everything we need to say. I saw the press conference. I had no idea about Theo's background, about the other women. You have to believe me." "Do I? I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I loved you. I still love you." You have a funny way of showing it. I was scared, confused. He was very convincing. He was a professional liar, Naomi, and you chose to believe him over me. There was a long silence. When she spoke again, her voice was broken. "What do you want? Money? The company? I'll give you whatever you want if you'll just consider trying again. I want you to have reflected on what you did, really reflected. I want you to understand that you didn't just fire an employee or end a marriage. You tried to destroy a human being based on lies." "I understand that now." "Do you? Because 3 weeks ago, when I asked if you believed I was capable of harassment, you couldn't give me a straight answer. That told me everything I needed to know about what you really thought of me. Alex, the divorce papers stand, the lawsuit stands. Margaret will be in touch about the settlement." I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside, Seattle sparkled in the evening light, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. 6 months later, I was sitting in the conference room at Davidson and Associates, waiting for the final settlement meeting. The media storm had died down. Theo had fled Seattle ahead of criminal charges, and Rivers Tech was struggling to survive the scandal. Naomi walked in looking like a ghost of her former self. The confident executive who had destroyed my career was gone, replaced by someone who looked beaten down by months of legal battles and public scrutiny. "Alex," she said quietly, taking the seat across from me. "Naomi." Margaret Davidson laid out the settlement agreement with professional efficiency. "Mrs. Rivers will retain 40% ownership of Rivers Tech, valued at current market rates. Mr. Rivers will receive 60% plus damages for wrongful termination, reputation harm, and emotional distress." 60%? Naomi's lawyer looked shocked. "Your client's actions directly caused a 70% drop in company value," Margaret replied coldly. "She's lucky we're not demanding more." The numbers were staggering. What had once been a $50 million company was now worth barely $15 million, thanks to the scandal and the loss of major clients. My 60% share plus damages came to about $12 million. "There are also criminal charges pending against Theodore Lansing," Margaret continued. "The FBI has issued a warrant for his arrest on charges of wire fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft. Mrs. Rivers has agreed to cooperate fully with the investigation." Naomi signed the papers without argument. She looked defeated, exhausted, like someone who had finally run out of fight. After the lawyers finished their business and left us alone, Naomi and I sat in silence for several minutes. "I've been going to therapy," she said finally. "Good. Trying to understand how I let this happen. How I could have been so blind." "And what did you learn?" She was quiet for a long time. "That I was already unhappy in our marriage. That I felt trapped, like I was living someone else's life. When Theo came along, he represented everything I thought I wanted. Youth, excitement, possibility. So you threw away 8 years for a fantasy." "I threw away 8 years because I was a coward. Instead of talking to you about my feelings, instead of working on our problems, I chose the easy path. I chose to believe that you were the problem instead of admitting that I was." It was the most honest thing she'd said to me in years. "The company's dying," she continued. "Half our clients left after the scandal. The other half are negotiating reduced contracts. I'll probably have to sell within the year." "I'm sorry. Are you?" I considered the question. "I'm sorry it came to this. I'm sorry we couldn't find a better way, but I'm not sorry you're facing consequences for what you did." "I know." She stood up to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, I really did love you. I just love the idea of something else more. I know." After she left, I sat alone in the conference room, thinking about the past year. I'd won everything I'd fought for. Money, vindication, revenge, but it felt hollow, like eating cotton candy that dissolves the moment it touches your tongue. My phone buzzed. A text from Pete Morrison. "Theo's been arrested in Miami. Thought you'd want to know." I smiled for the first time in months. Theodore Lansing Whitmore, professional con artist and destroyer of marriages, was finally going to face justice. 3 days later, I was in my new office, a sleek space in downtown Seattle where I'd started my own consulting firm. The view wasn't as good as my old office at Rivers Tech, but it was mine. I was reviewing contracts when my assistant buzzed me. "Mr. Rivers, there's a woman here to see you. Says her name is Patricia Webb." "I don't have an appointment with anyone by that name. She says it's about Theodore Lansing." I told my assistant to send her in. Patricia Webb was about 50, well-dressed, with the kind of desperate energy that comes from fighting a losing battle. "Mr. Rivers, thank you for seeing me. I'm Theodore's mother." I gestured for her to sit down. "Mrs. Webb? I kept my maiden name professionally. Theodore is my son from my first marriage. What can I do for you?" "I want to apologize for what my son did to you, to your marriage, to your company. I know it doesn't mean much, but I needed you to know that his family is horrified by his actions." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Theodore has been a problem for years, and we kept enabling him. Paying his debts, covering up his mistakes, making his problems disappear with money. We thought we were helping him, but we were just making it possible for him to hurt more people. And now? Now he's in federal custody, and we're done. No more bailouts, no more cover-ups, no more excuses. He's going to face the consequences of his actions." "Good." Patricia Webb reached into her purse and pulled out a check. "This is for the victims, all of them. It won't undo the damage, but it's something." I looked at the check. $5 million. "Mrs. Webb, I can't accept this. Please. My family made money in hospitality by treating people well, by earning trust. Theodore violated everything we believe in. This is our way of trying to make amends." I thought about Jennifer Walsh, about the other women who had been destroyed by Theo's cons, about the marriages that had been shattered and careers that had been ruined. "I'll set up a victims fund," I said. "Make sure it gets to the people who need it." "Thank you." After she left, I sat looking at the check for a long time. $5 million wouldn't bring back the marriages Theo had destroyed or repair the careers he had ended, but it was acknowledgement that what he had done was wrong. My phone rang. "Margaret Davidson." "Alex, I have news. Theo just pled guilty to all charges. He's looking at 10 to 15 years in federal prison." "Good. There's more. The FBI found evidence linking him to at least 6 other cases across the country. You weren't his first victim, and you wouldn't have been his last if you hadn't fought back." After I hung up, I walked to my window and looked out at Seattle. The rain had stopped for once, and the city sparkled in the afternoon sunlight. Somewhere out there, Naomi was trying to rebuild her company and her life. Theo was in a federal holding cell, waiting to be sentenced, and I was here, in my own office, building something new. My assistant buzzed me again. Mr. Rivers, your 2 o'clock appointment is here. Send them in. The door opened, and a young woman walked in. She was about 30, professionally dressed, with the kind of nervous energy that comes from desperation. Mr. Rivers, my name is Sarah Chen. I think my husband is being set up by someone at his company, and I don't know who else to turn to. I gestured for her to sit down. Tell me everything. As Sarah Chen began her story, a tale of workplace accusations, manufactured evidence, and a marriage under siege, I realized that my fight with Theo had been about more than just personal revenge. It had been about establishing that people like him could be stopped, that their victims could fight back, that the truth could still matter. Mr. Rivers, Sarah said, can you help us? I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Let's find out exactly what we're dealing with. Outside, Seattle hummed with life and possibility. Inside, I was ready to fight another battle for another family that refused to be destroyed by lies. The war against people like Theodore Lansing was far from over, but at least now I knew it could be won.